Welcome back to the third session of Positive Solutions for Families. This session is called Why Do Children Do What They Do? In this session, we will determine the meaning of your child's behavior. We will discuss how it is important to make expectations clear for your child. We will share how to develop and teach household rules. We'll talk about things to try at home activities. Let's start by discussing your things to try at home activities from the last session. When playing with your child, it is best to follow his or her lead by waiting, watching, and then joining. Did you find it difficult to follow their lead? How did you feel? Were you able to see the benefits? To support your child's friendship skills, were you able to plan a play date or go to the park? If so, how did it go? Please continue to try to find time to play with your child and make positive comments and encouragement. Making deposits into your child's relationship tank will help them feel more competent and confident. Finally, did you identify the behaviors that you would like to see decrease? In addition, did you identify how to encourage your child to use the behaviors you would like to increase? Now we will get started on this week's topic. Why do children do what they do? You've probably asked yourself that question many times. I know that I ask that question often. Behavior is meaningful and communicates a message. When children do not have an appropriate way to communicate a message, they can resort to using challenging behavior as a way to communicate to others what they want and need. A child who has limited social skills or has learned over time that engaging in challenging behavior will meet his or her needs effectively may also use challenging behavior instead of language, even if he or she has language. Children often engage in challenging behavior because it works for them. It may help a child obtain what they want, which could be attention, a toy, or food. It could also help them escape or avoid something or someone. For example, a demand, attention, or stimulation. To demonstrate this, let's look at a video to see if we can determine what the child is trying to communicate. As you watch the video, see if you can, 1, describe what you see the child doing, and 2, determine the meaning of the behavior.
We got 10 seconds and then we're going inside. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, next outside. Anna.
Unfortunately for this mother and child, this behavior happened frequently. Can you tell what message the child was trying to communicate? Some people may feel that this was an example of challenging behavior, while others may not. You've probably seen situations where you're silently saying to yourself, why aren't those parents doing something about their child? Something that bothers you may not even faze another person. The families and cultures in which we were raised and our personal experiences have formed our emotions and beliefs about many things, including child behavior. Let's watch the next video called Nuffle Bunny. Let's see if you can figure out the message that Trixie is trying to send.
Nuffle Bunny, A Cautionary Tale by Mo Willems. Not so long ago, before she could even speak words, Trixie went on an errand with her daddy. Trixie and her daddy went down the block, through the park, past the school, and into the laundromat. Trixie helped her daddy put the laundry into the machine. She even got to put the money into the machine. Then they left. But a block or so later, Trixie realized something. Trixie turned to her dad and said, "Aggle flaggle clobble." "That's right," replied her daddy. "We're going home." "Aggle flaggle clobble," said Trixie again. "Blaggle blabble, wumbly flappy snurp." "Now please don't get fussy," said her daddy. Well, she had no choice. Trixie bawled. She went boneless. She did everything she could to show how unhappy she was. By the time they got home, her daddy was unhappy too. As soon as Trixie's mommy opened the door, she asked, "Where's Snuffle Bunny?" The whole family ran down the block, and they ran through the park. They zoomed past the school and into the laundromat. Trixie's daddy looked for Nuffle Bunny, and looked and looked and looked. But Nuffle Bunny was nowhere to be found. So Trixie's daddy decided to look harder until Nuffle Bunny! And those were the first words Trixie ever said.
Now that you've watched the video, what is Trixie trying to communicate? Does this video encourage you to try to figure out why your child might behave a certain way? Sometimes you may need to be like a detective. The more you observe, the more clues you will have to figure out why they do what they do. Let's try to figure out the meaning of your child's behavior. First, observe your child when he or she is using a difficult behavior. Think about what happened right before the behavior started. Then observe what happens after the behavior stops. Try to determine the meaning of the behavior. If it helps, you could write this information down. Why is your child acting out? What is your child trying to communicate? Let's watch the video of the mom taking her son to the library again. This time, let's look closer at the clues that the child is giving us. Observe what happens right before the behavior starts. Then observe what happens after the behavior stops. What do you think the child was trying to communicate to the mother?
All right, we got 10 seconds, and then we're going inside. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, next inside. Stand up.
Now you can be a detective and try to figure out the clues behind your child's behavior. You may start seeing your child's behavior in a new way. When behaviors happen, we may need a timeout. Timeout is effective when the behaviors are done to get the parent's attention. Timeout may also be used when a child is so angry or destructive that he or she must be removed from a situation to calm him or herself. This also gives the parent a chance to cool down if necessary. When using timeout, it should be implemented in the following way. Step 1. When the challenging behavior occurs, provide a very brief explanation, such as, you cannot hit me to get my attention, so you need to sit in timeout until you're calm. and immediately guide the child to sit in a chair. Do not interact with the child either positively or negatively while the child is in timeout. Step 2. Timeout is brief, usually 3 to 4 minutes. Set a timer for your child or let him or her know you will watch the time. Only end timeout if your child is calm. If he or she continues to be upset, state calmly that when you're calm, you can leave the chair. If your child gets up from the chair before the timeout is over, calmly guide the child back and tell him or her, you must sit in timeout until you're calm and the time is up. It is very, very important that you do this calmly and with a minimum of talking to your child. Timeouts work because the child can't get your attention by using the problem behavior. If you talk to your child by explaining in a calm or angry tone, your child succeeds in getting your attention. Step 3. Once the timeout is over, the child can return to an acceptable activity. You can calmly remind the child to behave appropriately by saying, I'm glad you're calm. You can go play. Remember to use your words, share your toys, whatever pertains to the situation. This statement should be brief and positive. As soon as possible, praise your child for appropriate behavior in that activity. Here are some common mistakes that can be made when using timeout. Never angrily threaten your child with timeout if she or he does not behave. You must calmly state to the child the behavior you expect and then calmly say, if you cannot stop, whatever the behavior is, you will go to timeout. Never allow your child to tease the child in timeout. Never apply timeout after the episode has occurred as a delayed punishment. For example, giving a timeout after arriving home from the store where your child has misbehaved will not be effective. Never use timeouts as the only approach. We have reviewed many approaches. They should be used to teach your child new skills. Never scold or berate your child when putting him or her in timeout. Always stay calm. While timeout can give you and your child time to calm down, it does not teach your child a new skill. Remember that you must teach your child new ways to behave, express emotions, and solve problems. Making your expectations clear is a powerful parenting tool to think about. Often we give children information about what we do not want them to do without ever really teaching them what our expectations are. What do we want them to do? You may have even given up on asking your child to do the things because you are so frustrated by his or her behavior. So, stop and carefully consider if your child knows what you want them to do. Some behavior occurs because your child doesn't know how to act differently, and some because your child won't. Either way, it helps to know that your child is not being expected to read your mind. Give one clear instruction at a time. When confronted with challenging behavior, we tend to conclude that the individual either can't or won't do otherwise. Can't suggests that the child lacks a necessary skill or ability. Won't suggests that the child has the necessary equipment but appears to be deliberately refusing to engage in a more desirable behavior. And remember, we tend to react differently depending on which way we're leaning. Or sometimes we just freeze because we're so uncertain about why the child is doing what he or she is doing that we don't know what to do next. In the middle of a challenging situation, it can be very hard to determine whether the child's behavior is the result of a can't or a won't situation. Here's a good rule of thumb. When in doubt, assume can't, at least until you're able to get more information about the child in same or similar situations across time. A very important approach to getting a better understanding of can't or won't is to be very clear about what you're expecting in the way of desired behavior. And an excellent technique in that regard is to give just one instruction at a time. Can your 4-year-old make his or her bed? Will your 4-year-old make his or her bed? Maybe, especially if you walk through the process with him or her. Ask him or her to begin by taking the pillows off the bed. Then pull up the sheet first on one side and then the other. Bed too close to the wall? Practice kneeling in the middle of the bed to pull the covers in place. Take it step by step until the bed is reasonably well made. To help your child know what your expectations are, let's develop a few household rules. You all probably have household rules that we want our children to follow, but have we written them down and taught them to our child? We are going to talk about the ways to create your household rules with your child, teach them to your child, and then use encouragement and positive comments to help him or her learn and practice them. Let's begin by learning how to write your rules. For young children, it's best to pick only 3 to 5 rules. State the behavior you want to see. Be descriptive. What does that behavior look like? Pick rules that can be applied to a lot of situations. Here are some examples of rules. Clean up after yourself. Use an inside voice. Ask before we use something that is not yours. Use words to solve problems. If you want your child to do something, you need to teach him or her how to do it. Show and tell. Not only tell the rule, but you could act it out or role play. Practice makes perfect. Calmly review the rules often. You got it. Notice when your child does the skill and celebrate. One way to teach rules is to use photographs. You can take a picture of what you would expect your child to do and then model and teach your child how to do the expected rule. Using a photo while teaching your child will help him or her recall the expectation. It is also a useful tool to use when you tell your child to remember the rule, because the photograph will help him or her recall and do the expectation with more success. You have 2 very important activities to try at home. First, practice observing your child and try to determine what your child is communicating through behavior. Second, make a rules chart with pictures, if possible. Review the rules with your child every day. Remind the child of the rules before challenging behavior can occur. That's the end of this session. I hope you gained some useful information. The next session is called Teach Me What to Do. It will talk about controlling anger, handling disappointment, and problem solving. Thank you for listening.